All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome. I'd like to call this Transportation Committee meeting to order. As a reminder, this meeting is being shared via virtually through Zoom for those who cannot attend with us today in person, and it is being recorded. Committee members, please remember to turn on. Is that better? Awesome. Committee members, please remember to turn on your microphone before speaking. And before we begin, just a little procedural matter. Voting members qualified to participate remotely. We have John Basic with IDOT District 1. So he had a qualifying reason that he could not make it today. We do need, he will not be part of the quorum, but he is allowed to vote if we allow him to. So I will need a motion in a second to allow John to vote virtually. Can I get a motion? Mike, get a motion? Jack, get a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? All right. Motion carries. And good morning, John. So I'd like to go around the room and introduce everybody. I'll start off. Kevin Carrier, Chair of the Committee representing Lake County.
Good morning, everyone. Tara Orban, representing Cook County.
Amy Lee, CMAP. Megan Swanson, IDOT.
Scott Weber, representing the Northwestern Indiana Regional Planning Commission.
Heidi Lichtenberger, Kendall County.
Christina Kapkowski, Will County.
Jeff Shriver, City of Chicago DOT.
Scott Hennings, McHenry County.
Sid Kenyon, DuPage County.
Audrey Wenning, Metropolitan Planning Council.
Chris Hebert, Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission.
Eric Llewellyn, Pace.
Mike Conley, CTA.
Kyle Whitehead, RTA.
David Kralik, Metro.
Karen Robles, Illinois Tollway.
Jack Cruikshank, Illinois EPA.
Mark Kane, I'm the new representative for FTA Region 5.
Bob Dean, Center for Neighborhood Technology.
Doug Ferguson, CMAP.
Terry Dixon, CMAP.
Aaron Alaman, CMAP.
Jennifer Henry, CTA.
Evan Hayes, CMAP.
Mike Sopchuk, CMAP. Ryan Gugis, CMAP.
Brian Larson, North Shore Council of Mayors.
Mike Clemens, Lake County DOT.
Joe Serdam, Lake County DOT.
Eric Chernoto, Northwest Municipal Conference.
Matt Pasquini, DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference.
John Yoning, Collins Engineers.
Zubair Heather, Baxter Woodman.
Brittany Mattias, Southwest Conference of Mayors.
Leslie Rower, South Suburban Mayors and Managers.
Amadab, CMAP staff.
John Carpenter, CMAP.
Russell Petrovic, CMAP.
Sarah Stolpe, CMAP.
Martin Menninger, CMAP.
Stephanie Pfeiffer, CMAP.
Vicky Barrett, CMAP.
Amy McEwen, CMAP.
All right, thank you, everyone. Moving on to item number 2, agenda changes and announcements. I do not believe there are any agenda changes today. I do have a couple announcements and then we can do member announcements. So with us today, we have Mark Kane, who's a new member, Transportation Committee with the FTA. He's community planner with the FTA and he's just newly assigned to our region. So welcome, Mark. And Megan Swanson with IDOT OPMP. She's obviously been with IDOT, but newly assigned Metro Manager for our region. So good morning and welcome. Any other announcements from committee members?
Sure.
Yes, Jack.
The Illinois EPA has announced $27 million for EV charging funding. That is something that is eligible throughout the state. Important note for this group, municipalities may not be the lead, but the municipality can still participate in a project that would lead to chargers being installed on municipal property. Generally, we're seeing the private sector as the lead applicant here. And yeah, if you have any questions, happy to talk about that.
Great. Thanks, Jack. Anyone else? All right, moving on to 2.02 CMAP updates. Today, Amy Lee will provide an update on CMAP.
Good morning.
I have quite a few updates, but they're all good. So please listen. This is the first meeting in a while where we don't have a part update, a presentation, but we do have an update. Last month, as many of you know, the board and MPO policy committee approved the part report, which outlines recommendations to address the fiscal cliff facing our transit system and to strengthen service across the region. The plan will now go to the governor and state legislature for their consideration. And the attention shifts then to the legislative action on transit improvements, funding, and governance. CMAP intends to continue to play an educational and supportive role as these conversations move on to the General Assembly. So we do just want to, there was a lot of work, all of it, you know, everybody in this room, I'm sure, had some part in this. So we wanted to just say thank you again to all of you who contributed your time, expertise, and voice to this process. Thank you for being part, wink, wink, of the solution. I don't want to ever do that pun again. We are planning a press event on December 7th to celebrate this milestone and to hand off the report to our sponsors. So please stay tuned for more details on that. Changing topics to clean energy. Maybe some of you already know this, but transportation represents 32% of our region's GHG emissions. So to that end, CMAP, along with ComEd and the Respiratory Health Association, we received a $500,000 award through the Federal Clean Energy to Communities Initiative. So it's called the C2C Initiative. And this is through the Department of Energy. This program supports community-driven projects for solutions focused on the electrification of transportation, buildings, and industry. Over the next 3 years, this work will involve research and modeling with Argonne and Oak Ridge National Labs to better understand the types and scale of action needed to foster a clean energy transition for the region's transportation system. With our partners, CMAP will be able to better inform its work around regional climate action planning to establish transportation GHG reduction targets. And then continuing on with clean air, maybe some of you know the US EPA, they have a program called the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program. We at CMAP, in partnership with the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, is sort of, as part of this program, undertaking phase 1, which is developing a regional climate action plan for the Chicago Metropolitan Statistical Area, the MSA. So it is bigger than just our 7-county region. But what we did want to just sort of raise to you is there is a phase 2 of this program. The US EPA released a NOFO for $4.6 billion in implementation funding for states and local governments for GHG reduction, for measures that would help reduce our GHG according to that climate action plan that we're developing. Applications for this funding opportunity are due in April. So we do, right, the feds are really trying to push these things out. So we encourage you to kind of take a look at that, assess what projects you might have that might be good candidate projects for that. And please work with us. This is so important to let you all know, right? The feds are really looking for us to not just throw everything against the wall and see what sticks. They really want to see a concerted effort at the regional level to set priorities around what it is that we want to have funded at the federal level. All right, moving on to housing. As you know, our region struggles with jobs and housing imbalance. That's why Cook, DuPage, Kane, Lake McHenry, and Will counties are partnering with CMAP to apply for the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's grant program called Pathways to Removing Obstacles to Housing, Pro-Housing. Our application focuses on housing readiness planning. And so for those of you who are not familiar with housing, this would typically include tackling regulatory barriers such as zoning, the entitlement processes, building codes, and inspections that inform the housing types and price points of our region's communities. So stay tuned as we wait for word on our application for that. Moving on to ADA, CMAP, we held a fall accessibility training series And over 130 attendees came. It was great. The trainings covered the Americans with Disabilities Act, Title II, the Illinois Accessibility Code, the role of ADA coordinators, self-evaluations, and transition plans. Updated materials from these trainings are now available on CMAP's website for all 4 modules, as well as captioned recordings for our spring trainings. We hope our efforts in this area will continue to move our region toward being more inclusive and ensuring, right, that we continue to receive critical transportation funding. Legislative updates. On the legislative front, veto session took place earlier in October, and the second week of veto session was last week. The General Assembly appears to be on track to accept the governor's mandatory veto on HB 2878, which made several changes to the Public-Private Partnerships for Transportation Act. Our team is continuing to follow legislative action on this week, so please stay tuned for more. As session begins in 2024, we will continue to use our biannual legislative guide. Our 2023 guide can be viewed on our website. On the federal side, we continue to monitor these federal grant opportunities for our communities and work to bring our region together on consensus of our regional priorities. This again, I'm just going to say it again, please work with us. We do perform a lot better at the federal level when we are aligned in what we think the region's priorities are. We are on course to have an updated priority projects book ready for federal session in 2024. All right, so this last piece, local contributions, I kind of have my hat out now. In partnership with you, our region is making significant progress toward our shared goals of improving transportation systems, addressing climate resiliency, and maintaining a thriving economy while embracing and applying an equity lens. Local contributions from over 280 municipalities, City of Chicago, the 7 counties, RTA, CTA, Metro PACE, and the tollway make up 20% of CMAP's annual budget. Right, these dollars, we call them local contributions because these serve as the local match to federal funding, federal planning funds, which doubled under IIJA. IDOT contributes $3.5 million each year, which is the remainder of our local match to receive federal metropolitan planning funds. So as a reminder, last year, our large government agency partners, their contributions were doubled to help support leveraging and getting as much of these dollars into our region. We kind of took that approach because we understood these larger agencies were better positioned to move quicker. So we doubled those contributions, and then year on year, we are asking for a 4% increase in subsequent years to make that match. Recognizing that municipalities need a little more runway on this, in the coming year, we are asking to increase their contributions by 20%, and then subsequent years, again, 4% each year, so that all agencies will then sort of fall on track with each other. So CMAP will be sending our annual invoices out this month, which are due by the end of January of 2024. Had to make sure you understood January of 2024. We are happy to answer any questions and share more information on that. If I don't know the answer to your question, I'll be glad to try to get you the answers. But thank you for your continued support and partnership.
Great. Thank you, Amy, for those updates. Moving along, item 3.01, approval of the minutes from our September meeting. So we have before us the draft minutes from our September 22nd meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
As I said, yeah. Second? Karen had one. Okay, thank you. Motion to second. Is there any discussion on the minutes we have before us or any questions? All right, seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, item 4.01. Russell's here today, provide an overview of fiscal year 23 through 28 TIP program amendments. Welcome. Good morning, Russell.
All right.
Included in your packet today is a memo detailing the 89 tip changes contained in formal tip amendment 24-02 and the 131 tip changes contained in administrative amendments 24-02.1 and 24-02.2. As seen in the memo, formal amendments resulted in an increase of $509.2 million in total project costs for all prior, current, and future years. There are a lot of good investments in the region that are reflected in the formal tip amendments being presented that I want to call attention to. As a region, we do want to see the implementation of RSPs, and the bulk of the increase seen in the formal amendments is for RSP 30, otherwise known as TIP ID 0400-0023, or to the public, the Eisenhower Expressway. IDOT added $25 million for phase 2 engineering related to drainage and sewer work in 2024, and a little over $300 million for construction engineering in the out years. There are also 8 new projects being added that support pedestrian and bicycle projects, from bike paths to safe routes to school throughout the region. And there are also $14 million in new FTA Section 5310 funded projects that provide transportation, including operations and enhancements for seniors and individuals with disabilities. These projects range from tactile signs at CTA bus stops to the mobility as a service app for PACE to actual rides through support for coordinated services such as McRide, Riding Cane, and the Kendall Area Transit, which is the only transit service in Kendall County. Administrative amendments added $48.6 million to the TIP in all prior, current, and future years. The net change for total cost in the TIP from all amendments resulted in $557,800,000 being added to the TIP in all prior, current, and future years. As shown in the memo, project phases moving into and out of the TIP comprise most of the formal changes. Administrative amendments were primarily schedule and cost changes. The amendments, along with the memo, were posted on November 9th for committee and public review. I also want to mention that the conformity amendment 24-04 was released last Thursday on the 9th to start the 30-day public comment period, which will close on December 11th. That is not coming to this committee at this time. It will come to the committee in December for recommendation to the MPO Policy Committee. Staff reviewed the financial impacts that the TIP changes, both formal and administrative, had with respect to maintaining fiscal constraint, and can state that the TIP is physically constrained as required. Now I'm going to go off script a little bit and add a little comments here. At this committee, we often are at the intersection where transportation policy and programming meet. The TIP changes that I'm presenting demonstrate the vast area of programming that goes on in the region, and what gets programmed is a reflection of the policy choices that are often made here. However, there's another important component to transportation planning, and that's implementation. The implementation phase of transportation planning is often led by engineers at various DOTs or by consultant engineers. Without them, the policies and the projects that we as a region want to see simply cannot get done. Last week, we lost one of those involved in implementing projects at IDOT, Jim Scavala. While some in the room may have known Jim, most of you probably don't. Jim was at IDOT for 35 years, and I believe he was the district engineer in 2002. Zavir, correct me if I'm wrong. He returned as a consultant engineer at IDOT, where he also worked for several years. Jim worked mainly on CDOT's projects that were going through local roads at the district. Everything from CDOT's annual resurfacing project to CREATE projects to the South Lakefront improvements, otherwise known as the Obama Center. Those are projects that Jim worked on. Like a lot of folks behind the scenes, Jim just did his job and wanted to see projects get implemented. Many of us don't have a lot of interaction with the engineers that spearhead the implementation of projects, but I think it's always good that we need to be cognizant of the fact that perhaps we need to understand that the engineers are actually at the end of the spear, so to speak, at the tip of the spear, and they're the ones who actually get the things done at the end of the day. So with Thanksgiving approaching, perhaps it's even a time to be a little bit thankful for all the engineers and the work that they do. Getting back to the memo, at this time, approval of the formal TIP amendment 24-02 is requested, and I can answer any questions related to the memo if there are any.
All right, thank you, Russell. Do I have a motion to approve the TIP amendment 24-02?
Orban, move.
Tara, thank you. Second? Thank you, Michael. All right, any questions or comments, discussions? Yes, Audrey.
I-290 was the lion's share of funding change in this period. I wanted to just ask a few questions about that project, given it is an RSP and it's of great interest to this group. We get, brief information in the summary, and I see that there was not a reference to transit beyond CTA station reconstruction. I want to just make the point that we need to greatly improve the transit experience along this corridor, as well as connectivity with the community and the neighborhoods, and not view this only as a highway project. For example, some of you know the Metropolitan Planning Council finished a report in the past year called the Reconnecting Communities Report, which documented transportation infrastructure that has caused harm to communities. And this corridor lit up as one of the primary locations in this region where there are challenges. There are significant pedestrian safety and access challenges along this corridor. So, when I went to look at the website this morning for this project, I saw nothing after 2017, the EIS. And I think this group needs to understand what's going on with this project for this level of funding. So I'd like to ask IDOT about it. And if there's not time for a full detailed presentation, perhaps we can have one at a future meeting so we can understand how this project will materially improve neighborhoods, connectivity, and multimodal access, especially given the point that was made earlier by Amy, that 32% of GHGs come from the transportation sector, and we need to make sure we're elevating other modes and reducing VMT.
Great. Yeah, thanks for the comment. I don't know, have we had projects on the RSP come in and give presentations before? Or is that something that we can ask or entertain, or?
Certainly. I mean, is IDOT available? I think John Basic is he still online?
Yeah, yes, I'm online. Can you hear me?
Yeah, so John, we'll work with you to see, looking ahead at the calendar for meetings, and we'll try to work with you to get that on the.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. It's a great project. There's a great partnership between us and CTA. So it's a great story to share. So yeah, we would definitely be willing to come talk about that and kind of bring everybody up to speed on where we're at. So.
Great, thanks, John.
Thank you.
Anything else, Audrey, on your end? Anything else? No. Any other questions or comments? Yeah, Michael.
Kevin, thanks. I'll just point out there's 3 CTA projects in here. One of them was already mentioned with the Braille bus stop signs that we're installing to increase our ADA accessibility. But the other 2 are also important. One is for incorporating some funding through Cook County through the Invest in Cook program in a study of bus priority corridors for BRT service in the city of Chicago. And our partner CDOT will be working with us on that. And it's important to get this in and to get it started. We have a long ways to go to get accomplished, but it's a good start. And then the other project is a very large project, and it's to update the Ventra system, which is a system that we're using, but it's also used by PACE and by our partners at Metra as well for regional access to transit and transit payments. The Ventra system was put in place in 2013. Which is 10 years ago. It doesn't seem like it, but it's been 10 years that we've had Ventra here. This will upgrade the Ventra system as a whole to Ventra 3.0, which is really what we need for more interagency operability and fare options. And so this is a good sign, and it's a good move. We all need to be a part of this, and our partners on the other service boards are also very involved in this project. So just wanted to point that out. And again, it's a good sign. It's a harbinger of better access for people and better and easier interagency payments going on. So.
Great. Yeah, thanks for those updates. And we hear that a lot about just fare integration and trying to get that, more technology and seamless across the board. So that's great to hear. So, all right. Any other questions or comments? I think we have a motion to second. So all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. On to item 4.02. Vicky is back to present the 2024 roadway safety performance targets for our consideration today. Good morning, Vicky.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all. I'm Victoria Barrett. I am a senior transportation planner here at CMAP, and I'm here today to present on the 2024 roadway safety performance targets. Before I begin, I would like to say that CMAP is committed to reducing traffic fatalities to zero. As described in our On to 2050 plan, one of our agency's primary transportation goals is to improve travel safety for all. This means making it safer for everyone to use our roadway networks, regardless of age, ability, race, income, or mode of travel. CMAP's Targets program has been in place since 2018, and to date, the targets related to traffic fatalities have not been met. This is not acceptable, and as I presented to this committee in September, we have developed a robust work plan to identify the risks on our roadways so that we can move to implementation as soon as possible. Many partners on this committee and in this room are doing the same. Improving traffic safety is a shared responsibility. Decision makers, elected officials, practitioners, and travelers must all take action, and very soon we expect to have clear guidance on how to do that. So today's targets represent the hopeful goals for 2024. While traffic fatalities have decreased since a peak during the COVID-19 pandemic, it is not good enough, and we will not be content until the day when we reach zero. So with that, I will start on the 2024 roadway safety targets that have been identified. And as I mentioned during September's meeting, if the slides are catching up, no worries. Right. It's a countdown, yeah.
And bear with us, everyone online, just trying to get the slide deck pulled up. So give us 1 second.
No worries. I'll go through the introductory slide, which is really just words on a page right now. But a reminder that I was here in September to present to this committee, and I looked back at the safety targets program at CMAP, and then also looked forward. Upon completion of our Safe Streets and Roads for All regional planning effort, which is scheduled to kick off shortly, we expect to create regional safety targets for the first time, targets that are informed by a robust plan of work designed to address systemic safety issues in our region, as well as high injury corridors and intersections. Until that time, we expect to support the state's targets, which is what I'm presenting today, while continuing our safety work with urgency to reduce traffic fatalities and serious injuries. So today I'll present the overview of the target setting process very briefly, the 2024 targets, and then our recommendations. So as mentioned in September, the safety targets are part of a larger FHWA transportation performance management program. There are multiple performance management targets in that program, including transit safety and pavement condition, and safety targets as a part of that. The safety target program is required within the Highway Safety Improvement Program that IDOT manages. And so these are the HSIP safety targets. MPOs have been required to set targets with the implementation of the MAP 21 federal authorization bill. So as I mentioned just now, starting in 2018, MPOs have set their own safety targets. They're set annually late summer for IDOT, and we are required to identify them by early the following year, which for us is February 27th of 2024. The process for roadway safety targets approval here at CMAP begins by receiving the IDOT targets in September, late August, September. We present them to our Transportation Technology and Operations Coalition in November. Typically, we present them here in December, so I noted that we're a month ahead of schedule for this. We recommend the safety targets to this committee, and then we bring them to our board and MPO policy committee in the new year. There are 5 safety targets as part of the Federal Performance Measure Program. The first one is the number of fatalities. The second one is the rate of fatalities per vehicle mile traveled. The third is the number of serious injuries. The fourth is the rate of serious injuries per vehicle mile traveled. And finally, the last target identifies the non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries combined. So this is the review by the FHWA of our targets to date. You can see the fatalities. The targets are listed on the left. The performance measures are on the left. The trend that is desired is the first column of arrows. The trend that is happening is the second column of arrows. You can see that the first two performance measures, fatalities and fatality rates, are trending upwards, which is not, of course, what we want. Other targets at the moment are trending down as desired. CMAP has supported the state's targets since the program began in 2018. So now for the 2024 targets that have been identified, I'm going to go through these together and then separately. So this is a list of all 5 of the safety performance targets for 2024 on the far right side of this column. As I mentioned, I'll go through each of these more carefully, but I wanted to just show that the process of setting the targets begins by understanding what the previous 5-year rolling average is. Because 2023 is still underway and we don't have final numbers, it is not included in that calculation. So the rolling average is based on years 2018 through 2022. And then the 2024 targets are based in one of 2 ways off of that number, which I'll explain in a minute. So IDOT sets its targets in one of 2 ways. When the trend is not the desired trend, it applies a 2% policy-based reduction to indicate agency support of reversing that trend. And when the trend is going downward as hoped, then a trend line method is used. As I mentioned, fatalities have increased in our state and our region. And they began to do so in about 2014. Of course, we're probably all aware that during the COVID-19 pandemic, they really spiked. And 2022, they came down for the first time since the peak in 2021. The hope is that that will happen again. This target represents a 2% policy-based reduction from the 5-year rolling average, identifying a 2024 target for fatalities of 1,121. Similarly, the rate of fatalities, because it's also trending upward, as we've discussed here, for the first time during the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw the rate of travel drop off and fatalities increase for virtually the first time in traffic safety data collection, which kind of resulted in a higher growth in the rate of fatalities per VMT, because VMT did not grow at the same rate as it had previously. So the rate of fatalities is also identified using the 2% policy-based reduction, representing an intention to reverse the trend. The 2024 target for the rate of fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled is 1.105. The serious injuries targets are developed using a different method. As I mentioned, this is a trend line method. Contrary to the traffic safety crisis that we're all kind of experiencing, serious injuries are actually going down and have been going down for a few years. That should only be understood in the context of fatalities increasing. There's a theory nationally and I'd say locally that crashes are just becoming more severe. So we are seeing more people die in crashes, which might appear to result in an improvement in serious injuries. But the serious injuries target is identified for 2024 at 8,418, which is a least squares trend line from the 5-year rolling average. Similarly, with the same method of least squares trend line, The rate of serious injuries per vehicle mile traveled is identified as 8.498, representing that trend line, the least squares method for 2024. And finally, the last target is for non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. So this combines bicyclists and pedestrian fatalities and serious injuries. This has been kind of an up and down trend over the last decade. The last couple of years, it has been trending downward at the state level. So the least squares trend line method was used to identify the 2024 target, and that is 1,375.7 for the state. So our recommendations, and this builds on the presentation that I gave here in September, is to support the targets identified by IDOT. IDOT selects the most aggressive target between the two policy-based, the 2% policy-based reduction and the trend line method. So they select the most urgent target that directs our work. We as an agency, of course, will continue to work towards our goal of zero traffic deaths by 2050. But in the meantime, and until we can identify our regional targets from the Safe Streets and Roads for All program, we recommend supporting the state's targets.
All right, great. Thank you, Vicky, for that and a lot of good information. I think there's gonna be some discussion on this one, just some housekeeping before we get into that. We have to get a motion in a second to bring this on the floor, and then we can have our discussion. If anyone wants to propose an amendment or something like that, then we would make the amendment at that time. So, can I first entertain a motion to get the approval of the roadway safety targets?
I have a separate motion. Would you be willing to consider that?
I think we have to get this on the floor first before we do discussion and then do an amendment, or can we entertain another motion?
Entertain any motion, I think.
Perfect. All right.
I have a motion to table this item 4.02 until next meeting, where we could receive a report from IDOT about how they use the data behind this decision to set the goal at 2% reduction and how they incorporate this goal into their funding programs.
We have a motion on the floor to table it to December. Is there a second on that one? Do we want to open that up for discussion? Okay, got a second from Audrey. Yeah, go for it, Jim.
So kind of wanted to talk a little bit about this. The reason I would like to hear more from IDOT is because the number right now is at 2% of what it was, right? As Vicky just talked about. I've talked with Vicky. I want to say also, I really appreciate CMAP's work on this. I fully understand that the goal for everyone wants to get to zero. That's awesome. Everybody agrees here. I would just like to hear from IDOT about how they set that and how they incorporate that into various decision-making processes. And I want to also note that the timeline for this, as CMAP has pointed out, we are a month early. So as I understand it, this motion, if it passes, will not delay the implementation of anything. That's all. Thank you.
All right. We have that. Anyone else have any questions or comments or discussion? The new motion we have here. Yeah, Michael.
I was going to ask a little bit more about the process that CMAP is going through right now to prepare for a regional goal setting. I think you've suggested that the work will continue through 2026 and that you're hoping to conclude it by, I think 2027 is what it was in there, which is also lining up with the next long-range plan being adopted. Is that?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. We're in a fortunate position that our Safe Streets and Roads for All grant, which will allow us to develop the county level safety action plans, will be complete about the same time that our next long-range transportation plan will be created. So we hope that safety plays a large role in that long-range transportation plan and can be carefully coordinated, and that the indicators that we identify for our FHWA target setting program can be incorporated into our long-range transportation plan, which will reflect the county level safety action plan targets as well. So it'll be a nice opportunity to align the goals and the work plan that is required to achieve them.
And just a follow-up question. I know that IDOT has a requirement to spend because of where they are, and we didn't make all 5 of the the goals here, that the HISAP funding, the highway safety, are you anticipating doing something like that on a regional basis? In other words, tying funding to the county DOTs to achievement of goals or progress on goals, and then requiring a set aside similar to the HISA program at the state level. And I don't know, I'm not deeply involved in this yet, but I'm interested. So
It's an excellent discussion question, and we have been talking about it inside our meetings, and we'll continue talking about it with our partners and ways to really encourage implementation of those plans and evaluating the performance of those plans. That's another nice piece of this work being tied in together, because our annual reporting to targets to this committee is also an opportunity to check on the implementation of the safety work going forward. So it's a nice feedback loop that way.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I think Tara, you had something?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. Just first to start, Vicky, thank you so much for a very informative presentation. The IDOT targets, can you refresh my memory? Those are set statewide. So that's not just for like IDOT roadways, that's for our county jurisdiction, local jurisdiction. So they're setting a statewide target, but their area of influence is just on their jurisdictional roadways, correct? So they're kind of looking at a forest level of what's happening.
Yes, that is
that-
correct.
is that
They are statewide targets intended to represent the total number of statewide fatalities, for example, not just those that occur on state facilities.
Okay, and then can you clarify I saw a mention of HSIP up there, and I know, Mike, you hit on it as well, how does that tie into how the targets are set?
So they're required under the HSIP annual reporting process so IDOT submits an annual report to the FHWA, and that's the document in which the targets are set. And there's been a change this year that just went into effect, which is the identification of 3 years of targets at a time in that annual report. So IDOT has actually suggested the targets for the next 3 years in that report for the first time.
Okay, thank you. And I guess I'm gonna offer one observation, and then I have a question for you, Jack. So if anyone has applied for HSIP funding, I have. It's like doing calculus. It is very difficult to apply for. And it has its limitations. So it's not the only tool in the toolbox. And, for example, if you have a roadway that experiences congestion and you're using federal money, it is not a good candidate for HSIP, because the benefit cost ratio will never allow, the state will never pick that project, right? And it's a policy thing. It's a federal thing. Like you can't, it is intended to be a low cost safety improvement. And I know CDOT is here. I want to applaud CDOT for the very innovative, effective work that you're doing without federal funding, right? With installing the concrete barriers for the, I forget the exact name of them, for the bike lanes. That is so innovative, right? So there's like so many tools we all have in our toolbox. Federal money is not the only, funding source. And as a matter of fact, it's a very difficult tool to use as an implementing. Thank you for nodding, Christina, because it is. And we're going to use it. We're going to use it. It's there. But I think, as you said, Vicky, it's a shared responsibility that we all have. And the other observation I have is that, like, when we're looking at the program that you presented, Russ, the cake is already in the oven, right? I mean, many of these projects are, have gone through the federal process. And when we look at the horizon, where is it that we are going to be able to implement the changes we want to see? And it is multifaceted, so, I personally felt like the presentation that you gave, Vicky, was very informative in terms of how the IDOT sets those targets. And I'm just wondering, for clarification, Jack, what additional information are you requesting that the state present? Because I think Vicky was very clear on like how the state did it in terms of, the trend line being established. If it's going down, we want to see it go in that direction. My concern as an implementer is, given the limitations we have in the near term on our federal program, what information are you looking for IDOT to present on, perhaps next month? And then the second question would be, can someone from IDOT confirm that if this does get tabled, that it will not impact the target, that needs to get set?
So we talked about 2%. Yes, Vicky pointed out that that is the process when the fatalities are increasing. I would like to know a little bit more about why that is the number, right? Why? That's what, on the fatality side, that is what I'm curious about. In addition, I'm curious about the extent to which that number, whatever it is set at, whatever IDOT sets it as is their prerogative, how that impacts things like the HSIP program, or even things like STP funding that ultimately comes to this body. So that, and yes, I talked with Megan about this. She said that that might be something IDOT would be willing to present on. Megan, is that the case, that we could have safety staff? Maybe. I mean, I know maybe you can't confirm, but what do you think about this?
So I discussed this yesterday with our bureau chief, and we were going to talk about it when I am back in the office. So I talked to you after the workday was over yesterday and haven't had a chance to follow up on it since then.
I fully appreciate
I'm
that
on
answer.
here.
Thank you.
Can you all hear me?
Good. You can answer the question, Mike.
Well, and yeah, no, it's a good question. It's been coming up annually since we started setting targets, basically. And I think Ms. Barrett kind of alluded to the answer, which is it was a policy decision. We've got to set targets. We want them going down. Do we try to, really get serious and come up with, some good prediction model, or do we set an aggressive downsloping target? And that's what we chose to do. And and this was probably 2017 or 2018. And right after we set that 2% reduction target, I think it was Jesse and other folks from CMAP staff drove right down to Springfield to explain to us how aggressive this target was and what we would actually need to do to affect a 2% reduction, because we're using rolling averages. And we listened to that conversation, and I think we understood the math, and we agreed with where he was coming from, and we set a 2% reduction target because we want an aggressive downsloping target. As it was pointed out, it is published annually in our highway safety plan. We just last year released a new strategic highway safety plan, which includes strategies that we're employing to try to improve safety. We just got a vulnerable road user study done. I think we're all kind of interested in looking at the same things. I'm not sure, Jack, though, if you're looking for setting a 2% reduction and tying that precisely to where we're putting our resources, I don't think you're going to get an answer like that. I think you're going to get an answer that we set a policy goal for aggressive reductions, and we're vigorously implementing multiple safety focused programs, including coordination with you all and others, to try to find ways that actually work with improving roadway safety. So that's kind of my answer to that. And I can pause there if folks have any questions or want to discuss that further.
Yeah, Audrey.
Yeah, I think what we're trying to get at is looking at how all these things interact together to inform safety. I think I've been on this committee for 6 or 7 years, and we've never once had a presentation about the strategic highway safety plan. So I think that would be very, very valuable to understand statewide strategies. And it's more than just what are we doing in the HSIP program? It's everything together. How are we implementing complete streets when we have 1,300 vulnerable users that are dying? It's how are we mode shifting? away from driving, because that is a safety strategy. So how do all of those things work together, and how is safety embedded within not only federal investment programs, but how we spend every dollar in our processes and procedures and policies? So I think that's what we need to understand, because if we don't do anything different, our numbers will not go down. So we need to be changing what we do. And so I think that's the conversation that we want to have. And how do we make systemic safety part of the framework that we operate in every day?
Was that Audrey or?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. No, yeah, I mean, I get it. It's certainly an important issue, and I'm certain that we can find somebody to come and speak with you all. I can't at this point commit to anybody for the next meeting. And I guess it's not going away. So I think something like strategic highway safety plan and coordination of different safety programs is a conversation we could have almost on a regular basis. So we can arrange that, I guess, with respect to how do we set the 2% safety targets and getting that on the agenda for the next meeting. We can try to do that. I think Ms. Barrett answered the question though, and I kind of reiterated that it's the 2% reduction is sort of a policy decision to put in place aggressive reduction goals.
Yeah, I think Tara's got something else to add, but real quick too, I just wanted, it sounds like, from what you're asking, Jack, is kind of clarification on the 2% and where that's coming from. Audrey brings up some good points too, that is a broader discussion than that, right? And I just have concerns, I guess, personally, of getting IDOT here or even others, right? The HISP thing, maybe, there's other people that may be able to talk on that, or FHWA and stuff like that. And can that all happen by December? I guess question to you, Vicky, is it sounds like December is kind of our drop dead in terms of the timing of this.
Yeah, we would like to have approval by the December meeting, the end of the December meeting.
I'm just concerned, I guess, about the logistics of that and trying to, or do we do that? I mean, I think it's a great topic and maybe something that we can consider for a future meeting and having a little bit more time, right, to prep that and have a good robust discussion on that, and then maybe give consideration for the next year. It's just my own thoughts on that. But I think Tara had something, and then Kyle.
Yeah, very interesting, Mike, about the 2% being aggressive. I think, looking at 2%, I think we were all thinking, well, that's not quite enough. So interesting insight there. So thanks for adding that. I just want to put another item out there for consideration. Every year down at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign in October, there is what's called the Traffic Engineering and Safety Conference. And it is like, I've never seen so many people from Federal Highways and IDOT. It used to be Division of Traffic Safety. I forget, Mike, what it's called now. But I mean, it is all IDOT central office, all IDOT District 1 traffic people. It is full of practitioners. There's about 300 people that go. I highly recommend, anyone with interest in it. I mean, there were so many informative presentations as well as from academia about, where things are going. And, it's really kind of on the cutting edge of, presenting. I know Cook County, we did a presentation on, some low-cost safety improvements that we were implementing with our MFT funding. So for any of you with interest, it is a very low-cost, I think high yield conference, technical conference for your consideration. Thank you.
And if I may just make a quick response to that 2% being aggressive, and I was kind of right where you were at, Tara, when I first saw these. I'm thinking, 2%, but the fact that it's a rolling average and this year hasn't gone in yet, in order for us to hit 2%, we would have to have an unbelievably large reduction starting at the point we set the target through the end of the year, so that when that new year comes in, it actually drops the reported numbers enough to hit 2%. So it's actually at the time we set it, it's a pretty aggressive goal. And Yeah, 2 weeks ago, I was just at an ASHTO Safety Summit, where pretty much all the state DOTs got together with FHWA and others and started developing action plans and things like that that are going to be implemented across multiple ASHTO committees and brought back to state DOTs and everything like that. So it's an area that is super important to everybody, and I feel like we're in kind of a period of reinvigoration right now. So thank you. I'm gonna mute unless somebody has any specific questions for me.
There we go. Thanks, Michael. Kyle, I think you had a question or comment.
Yeah, this is not for Michael, but just for a broader discussion. I really appreciate the spotlight you're putting on this issue, Jack, and so many people at this table who are working to advance it. The sad reality is 2% is an aggressive target because right now the numbers are going in the wrong direction, right? So we can have a conversation about whether it should be 2% or 5% or 0. In my mind, it doesn't really matter because right now the work we're doing is not consistent with that target. So I am totally in favor of bringing IDOT to a future meeting to have that broader conversation as Audrey is suggesting. I think we're making an error if we frame that conversation around the target setting. It should be about policy and projects and what we are doing to reduce traffic fatalities. I think one of the real challenges with Vision Zero, not just in our region, but across the country, is it has often become a talking point, right? It's easy to make that commitment. It's much harder to develop a strategy, a timeline, accountability metrics to make progress on that target. And we've seen time and time again, committing to 0, meanwhile, fatalities are growing. And I think CMAP is taking the exact right approach in terms of developing specific regional plans that are tied to actions, tied to funding opportunities to be able to track this over time and make real progress. So I think it's appropriate to continue to accept the state targets until we get to the point where we have real targets that are backed up with plans and strategies and funding. So I think we should continue to have the broader discussion, but we shouldn't necessarily rush into that until we're ready and IDOT's ready, because that's an important substantive long-term discussion. And we also should continue to support the regional project that Vicky and CMAP are leading, because I think that is the approach that we need to make progress and hold ourselves accountable.
Great. Thanks, Kyle. Yes.
Sorry, just a logistical question for CMAP. So if the state has already accepted these metrics, and this is now a discussion at the CMAP level, what change would come about if we decide to deviate from that 2%? Like, I guess we are having good discussions. I think we are all on the same page in terms of wanting to drive these numbers down and reach Vision Zero. But I guess rushing this to December, what's the outcome then from a CMAP perspective? If your numbers deviate, what would you do differently? How would that impact change?
So if we as a committee and an agency decided to make separate targets, that would be the first time that we are identifying a separate regional target. There is no consequence or penalty for regional entities not making their targets. We would just report them differently to the FHWA. I think we'd all want to feel good about the intention to achieve a different target. That's where it gets a little, I'd say, murky. But we can simply report separate targets, and they don't all have to be separate. I should also mention, we can identify a few separate targets or one separate target.
Bob?
Yeah, I support the discussion we've been having about a broader conversation about this. And one piece of information I think would be helpful is more about where the fatalities and serious injuries are taking place. Because when I think about this, I think first about the vulnerable users, non-motorized users, because we work in urban places. But then I look at the numbers, that's about 15% of the total. So I'm guessing there's a lot of expressway and maybe rural road crashes that are occurring here. So I just think understanding like what types of crashes are causing these fatalities will give us a more like robust discussion about what does it mean to push resources into solving them.
Yes, exactly. And all of the safety action plans at the county level will include a robust safety analysis to understand how it exists in each county, which may vary as well.
Yeah, and I wanted to say one thing too, to Kyle's point, and I was thinking about this last night, actually. You sit there and you think, is 2% enough, or should we be doing vision zero? And like, what's this target, or what's the message we're trying to send to? And I know, speaking for myself at Lake County DOT, but I think at, probably all the implementing agencies and service boards and everything, I think, helps me go to sleep at night is knowing that we do everything we can. I mean, safety is ingrained. It's our top priority from how we select projects, how we implement them, and how we design them. Even, our maintenance of traffic with, REs and construction workers in the field, right? So I think I was looking at it and not to diminish it certainly by any means, but thinking about it last night, it's like, I know comfortably whether our target's 2, 5, 10 or vision zero, we're doing all we can. There are two things though, I think, that we're always fighting against too. One is, we had a roadway we were evaluating that had 3 fatalities on it. And we looked closer at those fatalities and they were excessive speeding and driving under the influence, right? So I think one of the vehicles was going over 100 miles an hour, like 2 o'clock in the morning, right? So I mean, that is the reality too, is that there's, the human factor of it, and how are we going to handle that through education, enforcement, and stuff like that. And then the other thing that Tara was hitting on a little bit is some of the federal process takes quite a while. We have a project we're going through the federal process on. It's taken us from 2018 to 24 to build it. And then it's going to take 2 years for that safety data to come back into effect. So, I mean, we started programming that project in 2018, and it's probably going to be 26 or 27 before it works its way into this trend line, right? Yeah, it's just kind of the reality of it too. So just a couple points to think about from the roadway perspective and implementing agency perspective, just some things that are challenges for us and all that, but and certainly affect it. But any other, Jack, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you. I would like to stick by my motion, given that I don't believe it will affect anything if we adopt this in December. And if we do go ahead with this, moving it to December, and IDOT's willing to come present, I will make the motion myself to adopt the 2% target. That's fine. I would just like to have the conversation. And if IDOT can't make it in December, that's fine. I will equally make the motion to adopt that 2% target in December meeting.
One little minor thing, you had a motion previously to table it, which means it goes away. CMAP said that staff said we need to amend that to say, to postpone it to December.
Oh, okay. Oh, gotcha.
So if you're willing.
I'm willing to make that amendment.
Okay, amendment to postpone it to December. Second still, Audrey? On that one? All right, all in favor of postponing to December and seeing if we can have a little presentation from IDOT about the safety targets and for consideration at that time. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. Appreciate that. 4.03 committee meeting dates. So we have Doug with us today. A meeting, let's see here. Yeah, memo was included today for today's materials for proposed meeting dates for next year's meeting. Doug, you have anything to add on this?
Not really. The meeting dates were developed using the IDOT letting schedule, other federal authorization requirements, our conformity process. So these are the dates that we're looking for. Understand that they may change based upon how other things change in either the letting schedule or sometimes additional meetings are needed. But we would like your approval of these dates. Once these dates have been approved, they will go as part of a master transportation schedule, which includes the project selection committee, MPO policy committee, and we'll post that on our website for everybody. And I'll make sure a link goes out to this committee.
Great. Thank you, Doug.
I mean, can I make a?
Oh, sure.
Just another note, after the meeting, Doug will send out an email that also helps us all brush up on OMA and why this is related is, right, it's a nice reminder that we are a public body, the Transportation Committee, and we want to make sure, right, that we're hitting quorum, we're in abidance with OMA, Open Meetings Act requirements and so on. So just wanted to remind you that in addition to being aware of when these meetings are going on, make sure we're adhering to all the regular things that are associated with public bodies.
Thank you, Amy. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the 2024 meeting dates. Scott, motion? Sid, second. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion carries. On to informational items, so 5.01, IDOT's long-range transportation plan. So Mike Vanderhoof is here with us today to give us an overview on the efforts to update the state's long-range transportation plan. He is online, so.
Yeah, thanks. And Doug, okay, yeah, so here's my presentation. Before I start though, I mean, I do want to make sure Megan and I and others understand for the next meeting, you would like us to come and explain how the safety targets were set. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm hearing, Jack, is just kind of how that 2% target was kind of chosen, or what decisions were made around that, and then maybe.
And how it
and the
relates to programming at IDOT.
Yep, and the programming at IDOT, so.
Okay.
Mike?
Can you make sure that makes it through to us clear? Because I think it morphed a little bit, or at least I thought I was hearing some different things towards the end there. And then we will try to let you know as soon as we can whether or not we can get somebody there for that meeting.
That sounds great. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Okay. Well, let me.
Sorry, just one clarification. Are we suggesting we're gonna have the broader conversation at a future meeting? Is that what you're thinking, Kevin?
That was kind of my thought. It just seems like it's tight to pull that
Yeah,
all together.
that
So
makes
maybe
sense.
just
I
a
just
quick
was-
one, overview at the December meeting, Jack. And then we'll do the broader one, Mike. Yeah, talk about HISP and all that kind of stuff. We can do that maybe at a future meeting a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, we could spend 3 days talking about this stuff, but if all you'd like us to do is come and explain how the targets were set, I mean, yeah, that's relatively straightforward. As we get into more broad conversations about all the safety programs and everything that's going on, it could literally be, I mean, the safety summit I just went to was 3 days long and we just hit the surface. So it's a much longer conversation than a 30-minute session at a meeting, but we can come and explain why there's a 2% safety target, how that was calculated and why we chose it.
Great. Yeah, I think that would be helpful. Thanks, Mike.
Could I jump in really quick? Is what we are looking for here, kind of maybe a series of discussions that would talk first about the 2% and then maybe get into HSIP a little bit, get into some other things. If we could get a list of the various things that you'd like to discuss, not just the 2% for December, then we can work on maybe kind of having it be, every other month or so. Maybe we could get somebody to come and talk. I can't promise that because I can't make anybody come, but I think that would be really helpful if you could just say what all you want to know and we'll do our best to make it happen.
Perhaps the December meeting also involves a conversation about what we want to talk about, right? That's the first step of any conversation. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. So we recently started the next sort of iteration of the state long-range transportation plan. And I think y'all detected some of the maybe it was, I'll call it the soft outreach that we started kind of around state fair time, which is just after we got our contract executed and we wanted to get some presence out at the state fair. So things started trickling out a couple months ago and we're kind of ramping up and getting moving on it right now. As a matter of fact, like literally right here right now today, while I'm giving you all this presentation, the same exact presentation is going to IDOT leadership to let them know we've started our long-range transportation plan and this is kind of what's happening. And so even though you detected some outreach kind of starting up, I guess I just want everybody to know that this is all still the very beginning of the process, and it's really starting out with kind of lit review, data gathering, things like that. So you know, if you started seeing stuff happen and you were wondering where we were at, you know, here we are, and this is sort of real time in line with where we're actually bringing things along with key internal staff. So I got a few slides I'm going to run through, and we can probably just go to the next slide. So we've established, so this kind of shows the chart. We're in phase one. We've just started having meetings and issuing a survey. This survey is available pretty much to anybody who wants to go to the website, Move Illinois 2024, or use the QR code. I think we're up to just like 1,500 responses so far, but we're doing pretty well. I think it's on a pretty good clip, ramping up. But we're in sort of the data collection phase, I'll call it. We're going to be running the survey through the end of the year. I would encourage you to, I mean, I've seen Active Trans reposted on LinkedIn and stuff like that. I'd encourage you to not only complete it, but to share it internally, because, you know, we're trying to really reach out and find out what's important to folks for transportation in the state. After we get through this data collection phase, you know, we're gonna combine that with some information we're pulling together behind the scenes on the roadway condition and you know, just kind of CRS or HPMS, basically data on the roadway network and other modes we have data on. We'll start combining that with the stakeholder input and formulating, you know, what goals and objectives we want to set for the next 5-year period. So next slide. So the stuff that's going on right now, you know, this is kind of a list of the lit review type items. You know, there's been a lot of new state and federal legislation that affects transportation. We're kind of looking at the old long range plan. We're looking at mostly adjacent state, but we're looking at other state long range plans. We've got a whole bunch of modal plans that are either freshly done or underway that we're coordinating with, reviewing equity guidance and things like that. So next slide. And that includes getting a handle on what the MPOs are doing and what other non-MPO agencies are doing. So looking at the last LRTP, we had 5 basic goal areas: economy, livability, mobility, resiliency, and stewardship. We could probably get most of the current topics to fit in one of those, but I don't think we're married to these by any means. We're gonna set our goal areas moving forward based on what we think they should be. You know, and so we're going to look at the stakeholder input. We're going to look at what we know about the system, maybe what worked well from the last plan, maybe what we thought was a gap, and I would expect we will reset some of those goals. And then, sort of coincidental with the conversation that we had earlier, there was a conscious decision to kind of approach the last LRTP that safety was ingrained in everything we did, and not have it be a discrete goal area. And you know, so that was something that we deliberately did, and we've actually talked about a number of times since the last LRTP, and may revisit and approach a little bit differently this next go around because of the reinvigoration that we're seeing, some of the trends that we're seeing, things like that, and maybe some of our own internal observations just about how the agency operates, our own DOT. So anyway, this is kind of sort of the comparison to 2019, and just letting everybody know that it's not necessarily going to say those same goal areas that we have. You know, we've kind of looked at what worked well, what didn't work well, what would we have done differently anyway, and then we'll combine that with sort of some of the new things coming out of legislation and what our public thinks and recraft what we think are appropriate goals for the next cycle. And then, so they kind of run down at least the first 4 or 5 of these goals, objectives, strategies, performance measures. Those are going to be a key piece of sort of what's important and what are we going to do about it. And then an item that it was kind of here, it's the whole notion of equity and approaches to equity and things like that has been around for quite some time in some form or another. But we're taking a I guess I'll use reinvigorate again. We're taking a fresh look at it to try to figure out if there's anything that we can do there to sort of improve focus, articulate goals and what we're trying to accomplish in the area of equity. And we're actually kind of starting out. There's some more slides on this later, but we're starting out with kind of an internal look because even across IDOT programs, I've got multiple plans going. There's different approaches being employed, and we're gonna try to pull some of that stuff together. Different approaches. Some of it's based on, one particular product or program is implementing, something distinct out of federal law and regulations. Another one might be doing something a little different because of its situation. And so we're going to try to kind of take a look at that and just make sure that we're pretty well organized on that front and hopefully can share a pretty clear message to everyone externally. So next slide. So here's some of the states we looked at. Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Ohio, and then kind of couple things. They're all policy plans, so they don't include a list of projects like a metropolitan transportation plan would. These are higher level. Most of them did have safety in there, which we noticed, and then common strategies, collaboration with partners, increased mobility. A lot of that stuff is pretty typical of our last long range plan. And then just varying approaches at how they handle different things. I mean, which we kind of expect in any circumstance when you're looking from one state DOT to another. So next slide. So our engagement is going on in a number of formats. We went to the state fair. We've had some sort of meetings, what we're calling pop-up events. A lot of what we're doing in between these actual on-site type events is really pushing out on social media and encouraging participation. That's almost precisely what is happening right now with our leadership, is getting everybody on board and trying to make sure they're aware and getting their help and things like that. And so there's still quite a bit left to do, but this is what's kind of kicked off already. And here's some of the lists of some of the outreach. Most of these have already happened. We've gone and held sort of put tables out at different events around the state to try to just start talking to people. Sort of, I won't call it old school, but in-person type stuff, almost stopping people as they walk by. And next slide. Oh, I want to skip this one yet. Go to the next one. Sorry, I should have. So here's references to some of the pop-up events we've done. And then on the next slide, I think we talk about our Conversation Cafe. So we actually deliberately this time around used our fall planning conference to have what we call a Conversation Cafe. It's kind of a musical chairs thing, different topics, transit, equity, financial, whatever it may be. And seeing as we had 200 and some odd sort of transportation planners from around the state there, we tapped into them for issues, ideas, recommendations, requests, whatever they were willing to offer sort of as part of our fall planning conference. So that was last month. I would say this is kind of where the LRTP really got a little bit more kicked off. So if you wouldn't mind going back to that equity slide. Sorry, I offered to drive my own slides, but yeah, so the whole issue of equity is something that is sort of something we have to get our head wrapped around from a technical standpoint. What data do we use? How are we defining it? Things like that, but also kind of from the, what are we trying to accomplish? Vision sort of goals area. And this is a tool that is sort of a mashup of multiple data sources that we're taking a look at on the equity front. And it's always interesting from a statewide perspective, sort of how to do this and how do you measure success in terms of outreach and folks that have gotten an opportunity to provide input. This is something though that we're taking a look at and taking a look at, as I mentioned, internally, sort of in conjunction with taking a look at it externally, finding out, trying to get straight how our different programs are interacting externally, whether it be my SPR program offering match assistance to another program that's going to give a couple points if a project has certain benefits basically to populations that we're interested in for this particular measure. Two sort of overall goals of, what does it mean? Is this, equal distribution of benefits or impacts or sort of whatever at the statewide level? But yeah, that's all going to be a really important part of it this next go around. So we can go back. There we go. So starting to get to what we're hearing. We've heard, I think we're up to 1,500 comments or so far, completed surveys, asking folks, what kind of how do you use transportation system, cars, bikes, transit, we fly, we take Ubers, stuff like that. So we're kind of getting a read on this. And then next slide starts to get into what do you think goal areas should be? Number one, again, safety. We're getting a lot of comments on active transportation, mobility, which I'll just kind of equate here to maybe transit, but general accessibility, livability. That term's been around for a while. Sometimes it includes everything above and below in almost every category. So we'll probably need to nail that down, economic development and equity and so on. So I don't know that there's a lot of surprises here. If we go to the next slide, there's a little bit more. Okay, so here we've got top issues, infrastructure condition. We see bike ped again a couple times, kind of connections and safety. And so I don't know that there's a lot of surprise here either. An interesting one though is the next slide where we get a little bit more specificity. I think that's the next slide. Can you all, yeah. So here's sort of some other stuff that we should prioritize. And we'll probably be getting this deep when we get into really looking at everything and sorting it. Pedestrian crossings, transit safety, transportation demand management, communication, fast, efficient, reliable travel, climate mitigation, things like that. So, I don't know that any of this is surprising, and it'll be interesting to see sort of by the time our survey closes, what number of responses are associated with some of these different areas. And like I said, that and actual condition data and maybe sort of state and federal legislative areas of importance are going to help us drive sort of main goal areas. So, as I mentioned, next steps are to kind of collect the data, then we crunch the data and we start formulating goals, and then start drafting our next long-range transportation plan, which I think we have an aspirational target. In this case, an aggressive aspirational target of getting it done by the end of 2024. So that'll be a lot of work, and I would just ask for folks to take a look at the survey, go to our website. Feel free to complete it on an individual basis if you're so inclined, and you feel like this is the kind of thing you want to submit a more formal comment letter on, feel free to do so. That's our measure of success right now, is how well we do with comments coming in. So next slide. And if anybody wants to raise comments or topics, today, right now, that's fine. That's what we're here for. And then, yeah, offer always stands to set up something on the side to have more in-depth conversations. And I think that's about all I was planning to present. So I don't know if anybody's got any questions or not, but I'll stop there.
Great. Thanks, Mike. That was a very good presentation, a lot of good information there. Like you said, you guys got a lot of work ahead of you through 2024, but I'm sure you guys will get it done, and we look forward to participating with you along the way. Any questions or comments or anything for Mike? All right. We got one from Kyle.
Yeah, just one comment. I know one thing we're interested in RTA, and I imagine others as well, is just how the state can continue to support public transit systems from a funding perspective, from a planning perspective, really across the board, given how critical transit is to our equity and climate goals, not just in the region, but again, statewide. So looking at that list of peer states, I just would suggest that we should also look at states that have transit systems as large as Chicago's and that have a comparable impact. So it makes sense to look at Midwestern states. Minnesota, I know, is doing some interesting things with transit as a result of some state legislative action, but also can look at states like New York, California, Pennsylvania. These are the states that have transit systems that are comparable to Chicago's in major metro areas. So I think it's important to take a look there. From a funding perspective, one thing we're interested in is analysis of how those states are using their federal dollars to support public transit. Most federal highway programs can be flexed to transit. Our region, our state is doing a good amount, right? But are there opportunities where that makes sense? It would be interesting to see how other states with large transit systems are making those sorts of policy choices. Thanks.
No, thank you. And we'll capture that comment. And what I'll probably start with is we've got a lot going on right now. One of them is a statewide public transportation plan that is just getting under contract pretty much any minute. What I'll probably do is dish that kind of more in-depth investigation over to that study to feed back in to the LRTP. We've got the transit plan, active transportation plan. We're finishing our freight and our district freight plans, finishing a rail plan, starting a resilience improvement plan, and then just got carbon reduction strategy and NEVI plans done. So there's a number of other plans that are going to do more in-depth work in different areas and feed back into this one. And so those are also opportunities for everybody to provide a little bit more in-depth input. And don't be alarmed if you see the statewide long range plan maybe not appearing to be at the depth of what folks want to see, because this is kind of an umbrella document that's bringing information up from a number of modal plans, but I've got that comment and we'll get that over to our transit plan folks. So thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Mike? All right, thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 6, legislative updates. John has a few updates, I think.
Well, it's just an update to Amy's comments. She covered most of the legislative update in her remarks. The legislature did adjourn last week, wrapped up the veto session, and prior to adjournment, both houses, both chambers accepted the governor's amendatory veto to House Bill 2878. That's it.
Is that which one is 2878? Is that the P3 one or?
Yeah, yes.
P3, okay. Any questions or anything for John? All right, seeing none, moving along to 8.0, public comment. Does anyone from the audience wish to address the committee today? Seeing none, is there anybody online who'd like to make a comment?
Yes, John Paul Jones from Royal Grid Inglewood. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can, John Paul. Good morning.
Oh, good morning to you. I really appreciated this exchange of ideas and information about the safety, and it was a blessing that the safety has finally come to the table, as that was indicated. But I think Barry indicated it was the first time in 6 years that it been addressed broadly. I know in Inglewood we've had Vision Zero, and it was moving so slow, and the data was so inconsistent that even the alderman got involved and just shut it down, and we just didn't have a conversation for almost a year now. And so we're eager to kind of use this exchange that was from today to kind of revisit ways in which we can get the elected officials and the new administration to back us up on pedestrian safety. Also, I was happy to hear that you're going to have IDOT come down there and talk more broadly about what they hope to do to kind of reduce fatalities. We had an incident on 61st in Ashland this summer that people are still talking about, where a person was hit by a car, and safety team is still talking about that to a great deal. So the focus is certainly there now to kind of look at ways in which we can all be involved with some ways to improve traffic and pedestrian safety. On the question of the other thing that was discussed, if there's possibility, if we can get in writing from IDOT or from CMAP what they hope to see accomplished at the meeting in December. So I know y'all mentioned that you want to have them back, but it'd be important for us to kind of document what you want to be discussed, because that'll help us also to kind of prepare ourselves to be helpful in an exchange of ideas and information. But again, thank you for this. I was certainly blessed to kind of hear the things you was talking about today, and good luck. Thank you.
Appreciate the comments and thank you very much. We have Liz Dunn on the line. Can you hear us, Liz?
Hi, yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Thank you.
Yeah, so dialing in from the Lakeview community. Yeah, I think it's good that we have these 2050 goals for reducing VMTs and greenhouse gas emissions and eliminating traffic deaths. I think, yeah, arguably those goals could be even more ambitious, but either way, the data is going in the wrong direction. And to reiterate Audrey's point, if we don't do something different, we're not going to make any progress on these goals. What is the point of setting targets from a policy perspective if we're not going to implement things to make that happen? So I think that the IDOT representative today said that you're doing all you can, but I think there is more that we could do. And on the point of speeding, I would encourage you to talk to Dave Smith at CDOT about how they're successfully slowing down speeding drivers with infrastructure rather than relying on enforcement and driver education. One thing that I think this group in particular should take a look at is how traffic modeling is done at CMAP and how that influences decisions around significant projects. I've been taking a look at Redefine the Drive, which I know has been going on for a very long time, and people in the room have been looking at for much longer than I have. But the feedback that I've been receiving from CDOT and IDOT lately is that traffic models driven by CMAP say that it's not possible to significantly shift modes from cars to public transit or bicycling on the north side of Chicago. That it's not worthwhile to try to actually model for biking as transportation to improve it, or to reduce lanes of car traffic and improve public transit because people won't get out of their cars. That, the mode share for public transit is already so high in Lakeview that it cannot possibly go higher. But looking at other cities that are leading the way, and feedback from actual current residents of the lakefront communities, and data around preferences of younger generations, it is possible to get people out of cars and using other transportation modes. And that's what people want, at least in my community. And we'll have to do that in order to achieve these long-term goals. So I really encourage you to take a look at how we're doing the models and evaluating projects, and consider if they're designed to reinforce the deadly car-dependent status quo, or if they're going to allow us to transform Chicago and the broader Chicago region into a safer and more climate resilient region in line with our stated long-term goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. And I think we have one more person online.
Yeah.
Are they unmuted?
Not sure who it is. It's a telephone number.
Okay, we got a 515 area code here that's.
Yes, it's Garland Armstrong calling from Des Moines, Iowa. How you doing, Kevin?
Good morning, Garland. How you doing?
All right, Mike Conley, I just want to give kudos to you since I heard at the ADA that you'll be retiring from CTA. I want to give kudos to you at the end of this year, but I just want to ask you, are you still going to be part of CMAP Transportation Committee meeting after you retire from CTA? And just wanted to make sure from your point of view, so like when you be able to come back for CMAP Transportation Committee meeting, like any updates on anything that you have, like as a consultant for CTA, and make sure what CMAP Transportation Committee will have in mind. And also too, for Eric and David and you, just wanted to make sure like the progress of like what I heard at the PACE board meeting, just to make sure when I brought it to you at the budget about like the buses, if are you working on the programs to make sure if there's a fire, at which directions are y'all making sure that, will you work with the fire departments to make sure which route and the run numbers and where it is, so the passengers, especially non-disabled and disability who's riding on there, and the bus operators making sure where it's at, so y'all can make sure to implement a program for that. And also, David, same thing too for Metra. If it starts under the fire, like when the rail cars or the engine is, will the fire? Are you working with the fire department to implement a program, which station it's gonna be at, so y'all can be well prepared when the train comes in that's on fire, so the passengers will be well prepared, and including the engineer, especially safety is an issue. Those who are non-disabled or disabled riders, because they need to implement a program for that, because God forbid, if it happens down the road, how will they be able to be ready to implement it? And that's always a safety issue. Plus, we need a lot of translation just in case if it does happen, because those who can't speak clear English, and also for those who is hard of hearing and visually impaired, how to help them along with that if that ever happens. So, and I want to make sure that everything is up to date, and make sure if it's going to be in compliance in the future, so that everyone will be well aware of it. And once they hear about this nationwide area, saying this program is really successful, and then you can use it as a pilot program, so that if other big cities want to know about how did the Chicagoland area come up with that idea? And then they want to go in other big cities to implement it, and then maybe nationwide, or and if internationally or globally hears about this too, they want to know how to be well prepared for it, because somewhere down the road, only time will tell if it does happen. How can they be extremely well prepared for it? And also make sure that RTA backs you up on it, because we want to make sure that this program will really depends on it, because lives is most important of all, and make sure safety is most important of all, so that we don't want anybody who is deceased or something like that. So I just wanted to make sure if they have any opinions on that and any comments or questions from all four, I'll be glad to hear from your perspective of it.
So Garland, good to hear from you. Yes, I am retiring at the end of the year. And what I'll be doing is sitting in the back of the room with my buddy John Yonan back there, who's also retired from his prior job. So I won't be out of touch. I'm staying in Chicago. Okay. And then just to go on to safety, I think you're probably talking about electric vehicle and battery safety. And that's a concern for all of the agencies that are electrifying their fleets. I know PACE has got a program, and I know Metra, which is looking at battery-powered locomotive vehicles as well. We'll be doing that. We've trained over 350 first responders on our electric vehicle setups. And so we have set aside 2 vehicles at the garage, and we've invited in all of the neighboring first responders that are near our routes to come in and go through. Where's the battery cutoff switch? How do you identify the high tension lines inside the bus and how to avoid them? So it's very important, as you said. Safety is prime for everybody, and we've got to take care of our customers and then the people who surround our stations and our lines to make sure that that safety, particularly battery fire safety, is taken care of. So thanks for your concern, Garland. Good to hear from you.
Thanks, Mike, and make sure that you still be part of CMAP Transportation Committee meetings. So if you need any, if you have more opinions from them at their meeting, so it'll be good to hear your voice, what you have to say to them about it. And I'll listen into it.
Yeah, we'll get him an assigned seat in the back of the room there, Garland, so he can't get away. Appreciate the comments, Garland. I don't think we have any other folks online. So moving on before the next meeting, one little housekeeping thing is if you haven't signed the sign-in sheet, please do so before you leave for attendance. Next meeting is scheduled for December 15th, 2023. And unless there's any other business, can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting? Jack, second from Megan. All in favor? All right. Call the meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.